Get on this journey of food exploration.
Gosh.
You have a really fun show.
Thank you.
It's really fun to watch.
Yes, I was very stoked. You know, when you reached out to me for the first time, I was in Egypt with COVID. I was going through one of my worst travel experiences ever. And God, how did it start? I mean, everything starts obviously where I come from in Minnesota. Growing up, I was quite directionless. I didn't know where I wanted to. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I didn't really have any guidance. I didn't really have any mentorship. And so, hence the reason I failed out of school so many times. In high school, I was really into filmmaking because fortunately, we had a filmmaking course there, but it's just not something I pursued afterwards. And so around the age of 24, I felt like I was pretty rudderless. I tried doing a couple things. You know, I did radio for a while. I was at 104.7 KCLD, I think the 100th market in the country, not bad, doing 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., making minimum wage. And so I tried getting...
Minimum wage on the radio?
Yeah.
They really pay you minimum wage?
Yeah, well, if they would have paid less, they probably would have. Are you surprised? I mean, radio's kind of infamous for not paying any money.
Yeah, but minimum wage sounds crazy.
I guess they saw it as like they're doing me a favor by teaching me a trade or a skill.
Okay. Maybe.
Yeah. And so I tried getting a job doing that. That didn't work out. And so I was at a point in my life where I just thought I need to do something. I'm still youngish. I was 24. And I want to travel. I want to see the world. I want to figure out something before I actually develop a long-term career. Because at that point, I had nothing. And so I had a friend. My brother had a friend who lived in Korea. And at the age of 24, I moved to Korea to teach English. And to me, it made sense because I could go there, I could travel, I could see the world. I thought it would maybe last an hour and then I would come back. But I ended up staying there for 8 years. And so maybe I'm giving too long of an answer.
No, it's okay. No, don't worry about it.
All right, I got to take a deep breath. Let me reset a little bit. I got to calm down. So I went to Korea. Korea was really challenging because it was my first time in a different country, and I'd really only been in central Minnesota at that point.
Oh, wow.
And so it was something completely different. And this is Korea in 2008. Like, there aren't really smartphones. Maybe the iPhone 1 had just dropped. YouTube still sucked. I mean, it existed, but it was barely usable. It was just cat videos and Charlie Bit Me at that point. And so there's very little guidance online. I went there to teach English. You might be asking, how did you teach English after failing out of university 3 times? Well, you can do some underground, under-the-table English teaching in Korea.
Did you have to learn how to speak Korean?
No, eventually I did, but no. So folks in Korea are very desperate to learn English. And as you may know, people there study their asses off. They're very hard workers, and they're very hard studiers, maybe to a detriment. Like, kids go to school so much, they study so much, they get tutors and things like that. And so when I went to Korea, I was going to be a tutor. And to tutor people, I had to... Sorry, give me 1 second. Take a sip. I'm freaking out a little bit still.
Is this the first podcast you've done?
It's like, I did a couple practice podcasts. I just feel like it's
What's a practice podcast?
I feel like it's so quiet in here. I'm like, I can hear my voice so well. In Korea, I wanted to get a gig teaching. And so to teach, you would think like, oh, it's going to be difficult to teach people if you don't have any experience or any credentials teaching English. And that wasn't the case at all, because when you speak to people, they'll say something like, oh, today I go to store. And you go, oh, I know how to solve that. No, today I went to the store. And so I'm teaching people conversational English, and I'm doing that for maybe 40 or 50 bucks an hour, which seems pretty good, especially in 2008, except for it takes, maybe you can do 2 or 3 lessons in a day, because you need to take the subway, you need to go around the city, and you need to go where the people are. You do the lesson, you come back. And so eventually I learned how to get a full-time job in Korea, which was what was really necessary. I reached out to a school, and I find out the code word is, can you pay cash? So with many schools, you need to have the right kind of visa. They want to see that you have a proper degree, which is understandable. And so if you just asked, can you pay cash, some would get your point. They would say no, or they would say, oh, yeah, cash is fine. We'll do cash. And so eventually, after being there for about maybe 6 months, I finally figured out how to make a full-time income teaching English in Korea at a kindergarten. And I know some people might judge that and say that's not okay to do because I don't have a proper degree in teaching English. But really, to teach English in Korea, all you need is a 4-year degree in anything. I could have had a 4-year degree in interior design and also taught kids English. And so living in Korea was the show I do now. There's no way I could have done it if I didn't have all that time living abroad for so long. And living in Korea was the first taste of living in a society and a culture completely different from the USA. In the USA, we have a very individualistic society here. And Korea is much more of a communal society. People care a lot more what other people think. I tried dating a Korean woman one time. Challenging, because she's not just looking at what do I think about the dynamic of this relationship. She's looking at what are my parents going to think? What are my friends going to think? What are my coworkers going to think? And so on. That's just one random example. But being steeped and immersed in this different culture gave me enough experience it gave me perspective. And it's perspective that if I didn't have that, I couldn't make the show that I make today, because the show would be a much more judgmental show if I wasn't so used to and accustomed to being among other cultures. So after a number of years in Korea, I switched to filmmaking, my interest to filmmaking. And I started making my own content. I didn't really have anywhere to publish it.
What kind of content? What did you start doing?
So back then I would read all these self-help books, and I was really obsessed with this idea of just improving myself, getting better. I felt really unaccomplished because 3 of my siblings had 4-year degrees. One was had a PhD. One was in law school. And for me, I'm the loser in Korea who doesn't have a degree, doesn't have a job, doesn't have a skill. And so I wanted to build up a skill in filmmaking. This is what I was really interested in high school. I was like, I can do it again now. Maybe I'm 20.
Filmmaking, like making movies, documentaries.